Welcome back. Sam Ervin IV and Trey Allen are both seeking election to North Carolina Supreme Court. They call it Seat 5, but they're in the seat here in this studio with me now. By coin toss, Mr. Ervin, you get the first question, and it's, a lot of new voters out there and a lot of people who might be dialed in on other races where millions and millions of dollars are being spent. Tell me about Sam Ervin IV and your qualifications, and why is the time now for you to continue on the Supreme Court?
Well, of course, I'm on the Supreme Court now, and so my qualifications for doing that, I'm a native of Morganton in the western end of the state. I'm a product of the public schools in Burke County, graduated magna cum laude from Davidson College, cum laude from Harvard Law School. I practiced law in Morganton for 18 years, did a general practice that involved lots of different kinds of cases, including a lot of appeals to the Court of Appeals and to the Supreme Court. In 1999, I was appointed by Governor Hunt to the Utilities Commission and served on that body for almost 10 years. Eventually decided I wanted to be in the courts, ran for the Court of Appeals, was elected to the Court of Appeals in 2008, and then was elected to the Supreme Court in 2014. I've served on the court since that time. I'm seeking re-election.
Trey Allen, you are the loyal opposition in this particular race. Your qualifications, sir, what makes timing now your time to join the Supreme Court?
So I'm a native of rural Robeson County, grew up there, met my wife there. I went to college at UNC Pembroke, then law school at Chapel Hill. I served 4.5 years in the United States Marine Corps. Most of that was overseas. I prosecuted, I gave legal advice to commanders, and I helped Marines with their personal legal problems. I came back to North Carolina. I clerked for a justice on the state Supreme Court. I then practiced law and became a partner at a firm in Raleigh, where I handled constitutional law claims and other kinds of claims in state court and federal court at the trial level and the appellate level. Since 2013, I've been a professor at the UNC School of Government. The School of Government is a unique institution. Government leaders around the state, including judges, rely on School of Government professors to give them unbiased legal opinions on a wide range of issues. Since January of last year, I've served as the general counsel for our state's court system. I'm on leave from UNC. And in my role as general counsel, I run the Office of Lawyers for the Court System. We have about 7,000 or over 7,000 officials and employees in our state's judicial branch. My office is relied on by judges, magistrates, and clerks of court for, again, unbiased legal advice. And I think you also asked, why am I running now? And the reason I'm running now is because I care deeply about our state Supreme Court. It has the last word on the interpretation of state law, and there's no appeal from it on matters of federal law except to the U.S. Supreme Court. I want our state Supreme Court to be one that people can be confident is making its decisions based on the law and the facts and not politics.
Outside of the opinion writing, which garners all the headlines and gets everyday folks' attention, a lot of other skills are needed to be a successful associate justice. What skills do you think are most important? What or the ones that you bring that you find most important should you win the seat?
Well, one that I think is very important and that I hope I bring is humility. My judicial philosophy is really one of judicial restraint. I think the courts should closely follow the law. I think they should avoid injecting themselves into politics. And one reason for that is because judges aren't really equipped to make the kinds of policy decisions that really belong to the legislature. And judges should recognize that and stay within their role. And that's also why I think that, as a general rule, courts should follow precedent. That's also about judicial humility. It's about recognizing that people who came before you might have had an insight that you don't necessarily have. I also think that if you approach the job with some humility, that you'll be open-minded. And that's, of course, also something we want in all of our judges. We want them to reserve their decisions until they've heard the issues fully argued by both sides.
Mr. Ervin, same question to you about those other skills. It's one thing to write opinions. We'll read about those, but that everyday work that you'll have to do.
It seems to me that what we really need out of a judge, any kind of judge, but particularly a justice of the Supreme Court, are several things. First of all, you need to listen. The one thing I've learned from my many years of experience in the court system is that litigants' most important value somebody who listens to them. A litigant that thinks that he or she's been heard fairly is more likely to accept a decision whether he or she likes that decision or not, and I think I do that. The second thing is I think you need to be able to explain the decisions that you make. Now, this does get close to opinion writing, but how you write an opinion is as important many times as what you say at the end of it. It's important that the opinions be clear, that they let people know what their legal rights, responsibilities, and obligations are. And if you don't do that in your opinions, and I think I have done that in the many opinions that I've been involved in drafting, the law becomes muddled, and that's not a good thing. And then lastly, I think it is very important that our court system not become a political institution. I've been on the court, as I said, for almost 8 years now. I've got an extensive record of decisions. The decisions that I've made do not always look like what one would expect from a judge of my particular political persuasion. Instead, what I try to do is call them like I see them, because at the end of the day, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to be fair, you're supposed to be impartial, and you're supposed to follow the law as you understand it, not as you would like it to be.
You know, being elected, it's a two-way street. It's trust between voters to you and you likewise back to a voter. But let's face it, going forward, the way it seems now, a lot of people are going to look at that D, look at that R, and maybe not what you've judged or how you've ruled and all that. What's responsible on the voter's part? Whether you're a justice or not, what's fair? What should the voter do in looking at two candidates?
Well, I would hope that a voter would look at the overall record of the candidate that they're considering voting for and see whether that candidate does what that candidate claims that he or she is doing. The claim that I made a minute ago was that I've got a record of making decisions that do not follow necessarily a particular political pattern, but rather instead try to follow the law as I understand it. And you, at least in my case, you can look at my decisions. You can see instances in which I have done things that one might not expect, given what you might know about my political affiliation. And I think that's at least some indication that a judge is doing what he or she says that they're supposed to.
Mr. Allen, I'll post that question back your way as potentially joining the court. People are going to look at you, they'll look at your party. I keep this as nonpartisan as possible, but there's a lot of people thinking if they vote for Sam Ervin or for Trey Allen, they can predict how you think and how you're going to rule. Is that fair?
No, I don't think so. What they should expect from judicial candidates, in my view, in part, is an explanation of how you will approach issues. And so I do think, as I said earlier, that judicial philosophy is important. I also agree that they need to look beyond the ads and do some research. In my case, having been a professor at the UNC School of Government, I've produced a large body of writings, many of which are available online. Anyone can go look at them. And I think if people go and they look at those writings, what they'll see is the work of a careful lawyer who tries to get the answer right, and they won't find any partisan bias in them.
How do you see the future of the North Carolina Supreme Court in terms of tone, in terms of how people view it, and in terms of how the media treats it?
Well, we are in a more polarized society, and I think that's why it's all the more important for the court to issue rulings that people can look at and they can read and agree that the rulings are based on the law and the facts, that they're not intended to reach a certain result that favors one party or another.
Mr. Ervin, I've covered politics for years, and you've served this state a long time, but it does seem like it's a different era with this Supreme Court. What are your thoughts on what I asked him in terms of tone, how it's treated, how people view that court?
Well, I think that one of the things that we've done that I personally regret is that when I first started running for the courts, these were nonpartisan races. The General Assembly it has the authority to control that, and they made the decision to make these races partisan again. I personally wish they had not done that. The majority of people in the state, in the poll data that I've seen, tend to agree that it was not a good idea. It tends to suggest that voters ought to look at judges as political animals instead of as judicial officials. What we are supposed to do is pretty simple. We're supposed to look at the facts, look at the law, make a decision. We are not here to effectuate some kind of political or ideological agenda. Our decisions need to reflect what the law is, not what we would like it to be.
Gentlemen, that's going to conclude my line of questioning. Part of the agreement of this conversation was to allow each of you a minute or up to a minute thereabouts to speak directly to the voters, to make your case on why you are the proper choice for the North Carolina Supreme Court. Mr. Ervin, I'll give you that first 1 minute block of time.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. For starters, I appreciate the chance to speak with the public this way. I would urge folks to seriously consider supporting my candidacy. As you indicated earlier, I have an extensive record of public service to this state. People can look at what I've done and determine whether I do what I say I do. But I believe that the record that I've got, not what I say, but what I've done, suggests that I can be fair, that I can be impartial, that I don't make political decisions. There are two groups of lawyers in this state that belong to organizations that contest against each other in court. Both of them have endorsed my candidacy for re-election. I think that suggests that even though those folks don't agree with each other in court and instead oppose each other, they both are confident that I can be fair, that I can be impartial, and that I do what I say I do. I would appreciate the support of the public. I would very much like to be reelected to the court.
And on the ballot, that's Sam Ervin IV, Associate Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. To you, Mr. Trey Allen, the final 1 minute and the last word for the coin flip.
Thank you so much for having us here. I appreciate it. I'd just like to say a word to the voters. The judiciary is not like the other branches. It doesn't have any enforcement powers like the executive. It doesn't have the power of the purse that the legislature enjoys. The authority of the courts ultimately rests on the trust of the people. I'm running in this race because I want the people of North Carolina to have confidence that the North Carolina Supreme Court is making decisions, even in politically charged cases, based on the law and the facts. I think people also want a justice system that's fair, but one in which if a person is found to be responsible for some crime, that person is held responsible by our courts. I'm running to give us a justice system that administers justice and that doesn't follow politics.
Trey Allen, Sam Ervin IV, thank you so much for your participation in the Judicial Forum here in 2022. Good luck and be safe out there on the campaign trail. And I want to thank all the North Carolina Supreme Court candidates for they've all participated in these conversations. And I especially want to thank our partner, the North Carolina Bar Association. North Carolina's early voting period runs from October 20th until November 5th, 2022. If you don't cast your ballot early, Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. I'm Kelly McCullen. Thank you for watching.